Everybody, welcome back to Wisconsin Weather Experts on this Monday. You know, last week we talked a lot about the big changes that were ahead for the state of Wisconsin weather-wise for this week. And today's kind of that day. You know, if you're away from Milwaukee, you already know what I'm talking about. It's been a dramatically different day today compared to yesterday. Those of us in southern Wisconsin, though, we will more so feel it tomorrow. But we have an incoming cold front, and it's going to shift everything. More fall-like forecast upon us.
You know, you're probably going to be wearing the sleeveless for some today, and then switching over to the sleeves like me tomorrow as some of the fall-like air arrives. And we're so excited to hear that from your full forecast coming up. But we are at least going to continue with some of the stories we were ending off with last week, and that's going to continue with, unfortunately, some devastation along the East Coast. Fox Weather captured this image of another house falling down in North Carolina on the Outer Banks as it fell again in the ocean on Thursday. Now, the structure collapsed due to the unrelenting pounding surf that's kicked up by two offshore hurricanes, Imelda and Umberto. It was the 8th house to fall in the area over the past 3 days. Now, piles of debris from the other 7 houses still collapsed and littered the beach. So unfortunately, again, we are continuing to see more devastation there. And what we're going to continue to talk about, though, is while those two systems impacted, again, a lot of structural damage on the East Coast, we are taking a look at some of the impacts that it actually brought to portions of England as well as portions of Ireland. So this was a time-lapse video that we had from England on Saturday, October 4th. Rough waves and really strong winds were impacting the coast as Umberto moved in. Remnants of Hurricane Umberto slammed into Ireland and the UK on Friday and Saturday, leaving at least 1 dead. It canceled or diverted flights and left more than 200,000 people without power. Winds of over 90 miles per hour were reported in western Scotland, and a high record wind gust of 92 miles per hour was recorded for October in Northern Ireland. So again, this was the video of it before coming in. You can kind of see the amount of beach that was exposed as a lot of the water receded. And then if we were to show you a clip later on, all the water rose back to the actual beach line. So really turbulent waves there, just white all the way around and not great. But the impacts, if you think about it, we start to see a lot of these tropical systems develop south. It impacted us here and all the way back over the Atlantic, impacted them on the other side.
Yeah, and we don't often talk about the other side of the pond, as we say, or I mean, they always do, right? So interesting to see at least some of the storm surge that area across the Atlantic dealt with from some of that tropical weather. Now, we're still keeping an eye on the Atlantic because we are still in the midst of hurricane season that continues until November. Here's a look at some of the named storms we've had so far. So Imelda and Umberto were the last two that we were watching early last week. Next up, we would see Jerry as well as Karen, Lorenzo, and down the list. So we've made it to I so far. Now, when it comes to our tropical outlook, we're still going to be watching, especially in the days ahead, some tropical waves off the coast of Africa. You can see that highlighted area there. 70% chance of it developing in the next 7 days or so. So we'll continue to watch that one pretty closely. And even looking at spaghetti plots, which are the different computer models that we use for forecasting. It's kind of nice when it comes to the tropics. We can put them on this map with what each model thinks the track will be, essentially. So for that tropical low pressure right now, again, it's not a named storm, but it could be in the next couple of days. Just gives you an example of what the models are thinking for its potential storm track. So it does look like there's one outlier that would bring it closer to some of those islands that, you know, just dealt with, especially Umberto.
Right.
So something we'll be watching very closely, I think, in the next couple of days. Again, through November 1st is hurricane season.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of those areas in the Southern Caribbean, they're just not having the right infrastructure to deal with some of the very strong winds and impacts from these tropical storms. So we'll keep an eye on that. And still too far out to determine if that could potentially come into the coast, but we'll be watching it very closely again as it's taking a similar path as what we just saw.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, we're also going to continue to track something else a little bit different than tropical moisture. We're going to talk about fires because the Lower Sugarloaf fire is still burning in the Wenatchee National Forest, which is north of Kashmir. It's grown up to 40,000 acres and only 55% contained. Over 1,200 people are working to put out this wildfire. So that fire's also been going on for a long time, and we are continuing to analyze that. Speaking of other impacts, we are continuing to talk about, again, these massive destructions across the United States, across the world, and now we're taking a look at Switzerland because they are dealing with some impacts from climate change. It's being blamed for the massive melting of Switzerland's glaciers. Swiss glaciologists said Wednesday that ice has declined by 1/4 over the last decade due to global warming. This year alone, there was a 3% drop in the total volume, which is the fourth largest annual drop on record.
Since the year of 2015, in 10 years, we have lost 1/4 of the total ice volume. This is more than ever. Temperatures are going up, melting is increasing. Snow cover variations in winter can modify the situation in individual years, but the trend is clearly driven by the warming.
And Switzerland has nearly 1,400 glaciers, the most of any country in Europe. Climate experts say that more than 1,000 of small glaciers have already disappeared. The gradual melting of the ice has implications for hydropower, tourism, farming, and water resources in many European countries.
Absolutely. Well, and how about this? Hikers on the world's highest mountain have been unfortunately trapped on an eastern slope following heavy snowfalls Saturday. Now, one report says the hikers were hemmed in an elevation of about 16,000 feet. Hundreds of rescuers went up the mountain Sunday to clear paths and bring people down. Now, one hiker who avoided being trapped says others still on the mountain say the heavy snowfall had crushed their tents. About 350 hikers reached a meeting point, and rescuers were in contact with another 200, according to Chinese state TV.
Not
very
a good
scary.
sight there. Yes, absolutely. A lot of people take that hike, but very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Not for beginners.
No, definitely not. Well, speaking of snowfall, while they had snow there, Utah saw its first snow of the fall season. Forces that force roads to close in Salt Lake City. The Utah Department of Transportation posted this video after announcing the temporary closure of Guardsmith Pass, which connects Park City to Brighton, if any of you know. This occurred on Saturday morning. So several areas around the mountain pass saw significant snowfall. At least they're able to see some of the roads out there, and they are treating it.
And they had a winter storm warning, I believe, in those areas
for
Friday and Saturday.
They did.
It all makes sense.
And we continue to track lots of snow across portions of Montana. Glacier National Park received snow, causing it to look like a winter wonderland. Take a look at these images. It was really fascinating to watch. The website with those large shots there. As you just mentioned, Steph, the National Weather Service issued in Montana even a winter storm warning and advisories. They warned hikers and hunters to be cautious of hypothermia and hazardous travel conditions.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, but far cry from what we had over the weekend, right? Record high temperatures.
Yeah, definitely very different. And, you know, seeing all that cold, it may be getting us thinking of some of the cool temperatures on the way.
Absolutely.
Winter, frost, freezes could be right around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we're going to talk about across the state is what our typical average first freeze is. Of course, northern portions of Wisconsin usually have their first freeze around mid-September and late September. Then as we start to progress a little bit further south, notice that we see more of the green colors. That's going to be more of a mid to late October. So we at least have some time before we are looking to see our first typical freeze, but it's going to be here before you know it.
Yeah, so you can see right here the average first freeze for the Milwaukee area, more so towards the end of October, October 22nd to be exact. But the earliest first freeze we've ever experienced was actually at the end of September on the 20th, but that was back in the 1950s. Now, the latest time that we had seen a first freeze was mid-November, and that was back in the 1930s. But Lisa, correct me, was it last year or the year before where we got awfully close to it being our latest first freeze. We were looking at Thanksgiving.
We were looking around Thanksgiving, so it was very close. And this year, while we're not on the earlier end of the spectrum, I wonder if we are going to be heading towards that later end, something that we'll have to watch closely. One of the things we also watch is not just the average freeze, but our average first hard freeze. Now, of course, that is going to be more impactful for people who are in agriculture that have any kind of plants. The average first freeze typically occurs when we have a 32-degree temperature, but the hard freeze occurs when we have temperatures in the 20s or 28-degree temperature. That usually is on the 1st of November. Now, the earliest we have had that is September 23rd, but we've been talking about the warmth this year. It just does not look like we're going to be on the early end of the spectrum. I think we might be pushing some of those temperatures a little bit later on. So while that may not be good necessarily for the bugs outside, it is going to be good for some people who have plants and are kind of farmers out there who may still have their crops ready for apple picking and pumpkin picking.
Yeah, that's very true. And now it still looks like above average warmth, of course, stays with us for the next couple of weeks, but we do need to remember that our averages are dropping. So that doesn't really mean, you know, the high 80s like we saw over the weekend. From here, it's more typical to see these 70s or 60s, but it's a little tricky. We just need to remember that the average itself goes down from here.
Correct.
So above average warmth still means comfortable weather.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear what we have going forward, and I'm sure a lot of people are, about the fall-like temperatures finally arriving.
It's on its way, absolutely, and that's because we have a cold front in the vicinity as we speak. We have two separate storm systems that we're watching across the U.S. right now. One that's finally going to impact those of us in Wisconsin, and then down towards the south, you can see more of that moisture across the southeast, Florida into Georgia, as well as the Carolinas and the rest of the Gulf Coast. That's where rain, of course, is ongoing as we zoom in a little bit, but notice how it does extend up towards the north a bit. You can see Nashville and even southern Illinois to Indiana and Ohio dealing with some of this moisture. And then closer to home, the cold front that we've been talking about for what feels like a full week, more so because it's going to bring us our first chance of rain in over a week and a half. I believe we're at, what, day 12, I think, Lisa, of dry weather?
13.
13,
close.
There you go. And so finally we'll see some of this rain working its way into the Milwaukee area, kind of favoring southern Wisconsin here when it comes to rainfall. And then, of course, this cold front's going to drop our temperatures. We just spent the weekend with upper 80s, and now we are dropping to 60s for the remainder of the work week. And you can tell, you know, the shift in temperatures that's coming out ahead of this cold front, so including Milwaukee. I mean, we're still well into the 70s right now because the front hasn't passed, but out ahead of it, there's still a lot of heat. Behind this system, there's a lot of cool weather across the upper plains. In fact, cool enough for some of these communities out west to see frost advisories and freeze warnings and freeze watches. So there is certainly a change in temperatures across parts of the northern tier of the U.S., we'll say. Look at Wisconsin's temperature change over the last 24 hours, though. I mean, a lot of spots are a good 15 to even 25 degrees cooler than this time yesterday, which puts most of us right now in the 50s and 60s. The exception is going to be those far southeastern communities, including the Milwaukee area. At last check, we were in the mid-70s. It looks like here at the station, it's 77 degrees right now. These will be our high temperatures for the day, and then we'll likely drop a little bit going forward. Now, temperatures elsewhere across the state, highs today will likely be in the low to mid 60s. So again, talk about a change. And you can clearly see the power of this frontal boundary. Out ahead of it, you've got those 80s and even 90s down towards the south in Texas, whereas behind it, most of the Dakotas and that region settling in the upper 50s to low 60s. So that's really what we have ahead of us for those of us in Wisconsin as a whole, but including southern Wisconsin. Today's going to be our warm day, and then you'll notice how we drop through the middle of the week, climb a little bit Friday into Saturday. Those temperatures, upper 60s, now above average by that time. Beautiful stretch of fall-like weather finally returning. And how about this? I think this is even more impressive. Look at these potential dew points here, dropping to 30s and 40s after this cold front actually passes. Now, when it comes to the rain portion, we could start to see a few spotty showers or rumble of thunder by late afternoon, early evening. I think a lot of it's going to pass during our late night and overnight hours. The good news is that it's gone by the time we're commuting tomorrow morning, though we'll likely in southern Wisconsin still have some wet pavement. Then we're back to sunshine the rest of Tuesday. It's going to be a little breezier on Tuesday with that northwest direction, and that's what's really going to start to cool us down. After today's chance for rain, though, we are back to a dry stretch. So this doesn't look to be a huge rainmaker for southern Wisconsin. If we have some thunder, it could bring in some heavier downpours, but you still will likely have to water a little bit in the coming days. And we're going to leave you here with our Brewers forecast because Game 2 is tonight at AmFam Field. Now, the roof is likely going to be closed. Maybe if we're lucky, it'll start open and then close. But keep in mind, if you're tailgating, it's not going to be like Saturday. It's going to be cooler, and there is a better chance for some showers as well as thunderstorms.
Well, I love that we have that retractable roof because game is still going to be on. I think we're going to have a big turnout in terms of Cubs fans and Brewers fans. Roof open right now because we have sunshine and dry weather. We're taking that live look as people will be filling up the field in just a short while. We're going to have a lot more coming up, especially looking at some interesting things from the sky that viewers have sent in. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Wisconsin Weather Experts. We're going to take a different look at the sky as we've had some great viewer photos sent in recently.
We have.
And we're going to start off with this one.
Gorgeous.
It really is. I mean, it almost looks unreal to me. But we typically call these, it's like those crepuscular rays where there's a lot of clouds off in the distance and the sunlight as it's setting is trying to extend out to this area, but some of those clouds are actually blocking the light, so that's what's creating those little rays, if you want to call them, coming out of it. So this is from Timothy in Milwaukee. We also had some other viewers send us in those photos too, but it was spectacular having some of the clear skies over the weekend.
Yes.
And just enough clear skies that we could see something spectacular last night as well.
Yeah, this is a picture from Amy in Cedarburg of the nearly full moon. It was gorgeous yesterday evening. We had that clear sky, as Lisa mentioned. Now, it is technically full tonight, just after 10:30, or I believe just after 10:40, but we are going to have clouds tonight. So hopefully you got to see it last night. The good news, though, is that the full moon normally appears full a couple days before as well as a couple days after. So I think Tuesday night will probably look a little better than tonight.
I definitely agree. And something that's special about this moon, which we'll get into momentarily, it's a supermoon.
It is,
and
you're right.
It is going to be the first supermoon of 2025. That's typically when it is bigger and brighter than our normal moon because it's closer closer to the Earth in orbit.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to continue to take a look at the moon names because we were just discussing this before the show. This moon and moons themselves typically have a name every month, but they can have multiple names. So our graphic, if we pop it up there, October's moon is called the Hunter's moon, but we've also had times where it's called the Harvest moon. So that is something that we are continuing to notice, at least in terms of the types of moons that we can see. Now, this moon was something spectacular because even though we don't have the full moon tonight, we had people in Milwaukee's lakefront even throw a party for it.
That awe was coming out tonight with a lot of these people, and it's great. It's just great to show off our amazing universe.
Well, this was a view from the Villa Terrace Museum and Gardens. The party had music, food, drinks, a large telescope, and plenty of people to gaze into the sky. A local astronomer was also brought there to help guide the guests see the moon last night. And it really was perfect viewing conditions last night for it. Although, Steffi, as you've been mentioning, we've been talking about that the full moon officially isn't going to be until this evening.
Yeah, peaks at 10:47, so you can kind of see the stats there. What Lisa mentioned previously is that this is one of 3 consecutive supermoons. It's our first one of the year, and now that basically just means it's going to appear slightly brighter. I believe maybe like 7% bigger and brighter. So to us, it's more of an optical illusion. You know, we can't really tell that it's a little bit bigger. But all that means is that the moon is the closest to the Earth during this full moon. Perigee or perigee is what it's called. So it's pretty fascinating. We love talking about these astronomical events, even though it just looks like your normal full moon. It's still fun to talk about.
Yeah, it is. And if you're wanting to catch it tonight, if you were paying attention to Stephanie's forecast, we are not going to have the best viewing conditions.
Yeah.
Clouds sticking around, but we will still be able to see a nearly full moon tomorrow, and the clouds should be cleared out by Tuesday evening. So you can still capture the larger than normal moon, or brighter than normal is probably what you'll see if our clouds clear out in time.
There you go, something to look forward to. Here's a live look outside right now. We still have a little bit more coming up on Wisconsin Weather Experts. I believe we're going to talk a bit about, let's see, the national parks. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Wisconsin Weather Experts. We were just talking a lot about fall foliage, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But first, we're going to talk about something more serious that's impacting our national parks.
Yeah, you know, amid the standoff on Capitol Hill, federal workers, contractors, and national parks are caught in the crosshairs, unfortunately. That also impacts people visiting the natural parks across the country. Fox's Amelia Roy tells us what the shutdown means for visitors.
Most national parks like this one are still open. People come, park their cars, and go on a hike. But yesterday, when I was on the other end of the park, visitors saw a closed-off gate where they thought that the park was closed altogether. It wasn't until some visitors saw locals parked on the side of the road and going through those hiking and biking paths that they realized that the park was in fact open. The official National Parks website does list all the park closures, but sometimes the information online just doesn't match reality.
I drove like 9 hours yesterday, and I get to Petrified Forest National Park. I got there before 5. That's when the gates closed, supposedly, but the gate was already closed, and there was a sign on the gate saying the park was closed due to lack of funding, or the government shutdown, basically.
Ahead of the shutdown, the National Park Service said it would furlough more than 9,000 employees, which means cutting more than half the staff. And more than 40 former park superintendents who've been through this before signed a letter ahead of the shutdown urging Interior Secretary Doug Burgum to close the parks completely, saying past shutdowns in which gates remained open with limited staff have hurt our parks. Iconic symbols cut down and vandalized, trash piled up, habitats destroyed, and visitor safety jeopardized. If you don't act now, history is not just doomed to repeat itself, the damage could in fact be much worse. A Department of Interior spokesperson tells me current park operations will stay as they are throughout the shutdown. In Pima County, Amalia Roy, Fox News.
Yeah, definitely not good there. So maybe view some of your local parks across the area. This video was from Aisha French from Connecticut, as the leaves are just starting to change in a few spots. But back here at home, we're also seeing some colors changing across the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, especially up north. And this is peak for a lot of those northern, Northwood communities, but gorgeous colors right now across the state. I do think we need some rain.
Yes.
It's getting a little dry out there, and hopefully no windy days, because our upcoming stretch of weather should be perfect to really see more of those vibrant colors here in Wisconsin. Something to look forward to in the coming weeks if you're heading up north.
We'll be tracking that, and of course tracking the weather not only for the leaves changing but for the ball game tonight.
Yes.
Go Brewers.
Thanks for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow.